You guys, welcome back to the Homegrown Podcast. Today's guest is Julia Ubbenga. She wrote this wonderful book, Declutter Your Heart and Your Home. We talk about it in today's show. It's so good, the conversation. It talks about both very tangible, practical things like how to not have to be stuck at your sink doing dishes all day, how to not be overwhelmed by your kids' toys, how to manage holidays with other people and gift giving. But then she also shares about how decluttering your heart and your mind opens you up to have more space to be an intentional spouse, to be an intentional friend, to listen to maybe whispers of the Lord. All these things in her life, she found that while she was writing the book, mirroring her external space also helped declutter her internal space. So I love that. Before we dive in, I want to talk about two things I'm currently consuming and loving every single day. Number one is our matcha. We launched a matcha over on Haselmayer Goods. It is ceremonial grade and organic and direct trade. And along with all of our other teas, it is just like a higher class. Like it is just like a high society matcha. It's so good. I'm loving doing a little, I zest an orange. I do some nutmeg in there, and then I make like a cold latte. So I'll make my matcha with the little whisk and I do the hot water, froth that up, pour it over ice, and then I do milk, a little either maple syrup or simple syrup, and then I do that orange zest and that nutmeg. Oh, it's like floral and citrusy, and then rounded out by like the sweet weediness of the matcha. You guys just got to try it. Go over to shoptheh.com. Check it out. You can use code homegrown for 10% off your order. I also want to thank today's other podcast sponsor, which is Ancestral Supplements. I have been taking their Fem Enhancement product every day. I love this because I don't think I've ever actually explained what's in the Fem Enhancement, but I've been taking it since about 9 weeks postpartum. So within this particular pill designed for women, there's also a male optimization pill that Joey is taking. I accidentally always call it male enhancement, and he gets really upset because like that means something entirely different. But Joey takes the male optimization. I think it's called MOFO, male optimization formula with organs. He loves that. The Fem Enhancement is so good. It has liver for energy and brain power. So if you're already taking a beef liver supplement, this has liver in it. Ovaries for feminine vitality, so like bovine ovaries are in this. Uterus and fallopian tubes as well. Bone marrow for cellular renewal. This is really cool because if you're thinking about what rejuvenates your body, where your stem cells are located, like your bone marrow is just so powerful. All of that is in one pill. So I am taking that Fem Enhancement. I also like to take on the side colostrum, collagen, digestive enzymes. That's like that little trifecta I talked about. But I'm loving that. And if any of that sounds like, ooh, I could use some of that. I could use some more vitality, some reproductive system support, some cell rejuvenation. Go over to ancestralsupplements.com/homegrown and check it out. Make sure you use code homegrown at checkout. You'll get 15% off your order. They do a 60-day money-back guarantee. So there's literally zero risk in trying their animal-based supplements. So go check it out. I love them. They're third-party lab tested for purity. They source from regeneratively raised cattle in New Zealand, and they're just a great company. So go over to ancestralsupplements.com/homegrown and use code homegrown at checkout. Welcome to the Homegrown Podcast. I'm your host, Liz Haselmayer, along with my husband, Joey.
Good afternoon.
And together we hope to educate, inspire, and equip you in your pursuit of true nourishment. Today's guest is Julia Ubbenga. She is the creator of the popular blog Rich in What Matters and author of Declutter Your Heart and Your Home. Today, we are going to be discussing both the physical decluttering of our home and also the decluttering of our heart and our mind. I want to cover all things from decluttering kids' toys to like really thinking intentionally about the technology that we engage with. So I want this to really be a broad spectrum conversation. And so welcome to the show, Julia. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be here talking with you.
I grew up in a very cluttered home. And so it is Joey's laughing because he knows my mom's going to listen to this.
She will.
Hi, Mom.
Just catching flames.
No, it's fine.
So to this day, it's like a thing of mine. Like if there's clutter in my house, and we have a very open concept home. And so this is like very top of mind. We're constantly having conversations about like, why is this a constant struggle? What can we do? So I'm very excited to learn from you and hear your journey. So I say we start today by getting to know a little bit of your, I'll call it like your minimalist journey. Like start us off on where that started so we can kind of learn more about that.
Yeah, of course. So I'm an unlikely minimalist. I have not always been one, pretty far from it, actually. I grew up close to my grandma, and my grandma loved to shop. That was her love language, to give people things. She loved to give me things. We'd spend time together and we'd stroll the malls together. And so I soon learned that shopping was fun. It was a way to feel good. It was a way not to feel bad, to kind of cover up hard feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And this mindset, it went with me into my 20s. I started making money. I started spending money. And pretty soon I had all this stuff and $40,000 worth of consumer debt. So when I thought about this debt, I felt bad. But when I felt bad, I'd go buy something new because that's what I thought would make me feel good and make me feel happy. And so this cycle, it really continued up until the time our second daughter was born. And I was working outside the home as a speech language pathologist at the time, but I'd always wanted to stay home with my kids. That was my dream, to be a stay-at-home mom. And so my husband, he got a promotion at the time, and I was able to stay home. I was so excited. But I had this really idyllic vision of what stay-at-home mom life would be like. I thought my girls and I would be baking cookies. We'd be giggling over tea parties. We'd be like snuggled on the couch reading Little House on the Prairie. And so in my mind, it was just going to be great. Well, a couple of weeks into the stay-at-home mom gig, I would not have even called myself a stay-at-home mom. I would have said like a full-time stuff manager would have been a better title, because Liz and Joey, that is what I did. I was constantly looking for things and picking things up and tripping over things that I hadn't picked up yet. It was just all consuming. It was exhausting. I was stressed. I was distracted. Like I was there, but I wasn't really there. I couldn't really be present to the people around me, and I was just overwhelmed. So a couple months into living this way, I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. And I have this memory of this morning where I was up in the recliner chair. I was feeding our baby in the nursery, and I was talking with God, really pleading with God. I was like, God, this is not what I signed up for. What is going on here? Something needs to change. And I was reading the Bible, and a couple of verses out of Luke chapter 12, they just jumped off the page at me, and they said, your life does not consist of possessions. Be rich in what matters. And so I paused right there and I asked myself, was I rich in what mattered? Was I rich in time for relationships, for time for prayer, for a hobby that I loved? And no, the answer was absolutely not. I wasn't at all. So that planted the seed that something in my life around the area of possessions needed to change, but I didn't know what. I didn't know where to go from there. But that same week I had a therapy appointment, and at the end of the session, just as I was leaving, the therapist said, Julia, have you ever heard of minimalism? And I'm like, oh, you mean houses with white walls and next to nothing in it? And she's like, no, there's more to it than that. Look into it. I think you might be interested. And so I was curious. I just did a Google search there in the car, keyword minimalism, and realized there's a lot of resources about it. And started reading the books and the blogs, listening to the podcast about it. And this idea that I didn't need all this stuff to be happy. And in fact, I'd be a whole lot happier with less of it, because then I'd have the time and the energy to focus on who and what mattered. It was a mindset shift that was life-changing. And it finally gave me just like a vision of how to get out of all this stress and anxiety that I was feeling at the time. So I went all in on minimalism. I started a blog at the time. I called it Rich in What Matters, based on the Bible verse that spoke to me. And we let go of 75% of our stuff over the course of the first year. And then we downsized to an apartment for a couple of years, got rid of our consumer debt. And then we built our own intentionally smaller new home. And we've been living this way as a minimalist family now for 6 years. We have 5 kids, ages 11, 7, 4, 2, and 3 months. And so now I've written a book called Declutter Your Heart and Your Home, How a Minimalist Life Yields Maximum Joy, just because I want to give people these tools too, to live a lighter life with less stuff and more space to focus on who and what matters if they feel called to do that. And I'm so excited about the book.
I love that. I've had the book in our home for a couple weeks now. I think your team sent it over ahead of time, and I've loved just like reading a bit of your story. I didn't realize you had a 3-month-old in the house. That is so amazing. So you are like reliving that experience again. I love that. What was the hardest part initially? What was the hardest Band-Aid to rip off?
The hardest part initially, I was really attached to my stuff, really attached to it. I had spent the time shopping for it, spent the money to invest in buying it. Like, it was mine. It was part of my life. I was really attached to it. And, I also just kind of realized finally, my faith helped me a lot in this area. And I think that was the hardest part. I don't know if I could have been able to do this without, to detach from my stuff. What I began realizing is that the things of the world, they were good and they are beautiful, but the higher good, like a truly good and truly beautiful, belong to a higher world. And so I realized that really all this stuff had come from God. It wasn't really mine. It never really had been. And that I was going to need to detach from it before I started letting it go. And so I actually began viewing my possessions more of like transient things, like fireworks or bubbles or ocean waves, things that you could just observe in the moment and then you could let them go. And I don't think I could have done that without my faith. And that was what I needed to do first before I could let things go.
Did you have like a starting point, like room by room? Like, how did you actually start letting things go and or getting rid of them? And what did that getting rid of look like? Was it some of it just garbage? Was it like donating a lot of the stuff, like yard sales? What was the tactics there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I had read all these books, and I had read that the best place to start was in like a small, contained, non-sentimental area, maybe a kitchen drawer. And so I tried that, and I had this really nice organized kitchen drawer, and I got all the feel goods from finishing a project, right? That dopamine rush. But then I'd turn around and our house was just overrun with kids' stuff, kids' clothes, kids' toys, kids' artwork. It was everywhere. And I immediately was just stressed again. So I realized that the way I was going about it wasn't making any functional change in our home. It wasn't really helping. So what I did is I decided that I needed to declutter our home in the area, starting in the area of the clutter that was causing me the most stress. So I just wrote out all the different areas that I wanted to declutter in our home, and I rated them. 10 was the most stressful, 1 was the least. And then I just went down that list and decluttered it in that area. So first for me was kids' clothes. And when I started decluttering kids' clothes, I just felt such a lightening that I hadn't felt before with that kitchen drawer. And once we reduced the amount we had, our daughter was 5 at the time, our oldest, she was able to start helping with laundry. Like, she was now wanting to help because the amount that we had matched her ability level. And I saw that, I'm like, I am on to something. And that motivated me then to go to the next category, which was kids' toys. So I would really recommend doing that, especially if you're a mom and you have a lot going on. As far as like donating or selling or yard sales, I donated most of it. I donated most of it. Most people don't really want your old stuff that much, actually. We overvalue our stuff, and we think that people will want to spend good money on it, but a lot of times they don't. I mean, furniture sells pretty well. Some higher end clothes can. But other than that, really donating it is the way to go.
Yeah, I remember reading in your book, I think you mentioned like your daughter had like a stuff parade that you would just like find these things all over your house. And I was like, does Julia have eyes in my home? Because our current 4-year-old, that's what happens. There's like a trail of things left behind. And I keep telling myself, well, like, oh, these are good craft supplies, or these are good toys that they're playing with. And if it's out, that means it's useful. Help break that mentality for me, because there's got to be a place where we say, you know what, just because it's out and being used doesn't mean I have to keep it in my home. And right now it's causing me stress. So how can I reframe that thought?
That's great. Well, with kids stuff specifically, I think it's really important to do some research as parents and realize that kids actually thrive in a simple environment. So just as the stuff is out there, it might not actually be helping them. It might just be overstimulating them. There might be too much stuff. And one study I really love was done in Germany, where they went to a kindergarten classroom and they took all the toys out of the kindergarten classroom, and then they began observing the children's play. And what they realized was, well, the first day, the kids were kind of confused, like, where'd all this stuff go? They didn't really know what to do. But then by the second day, they were playing so much deeper, independently, more creatively, better problem-solving skills. They were using the chairs and the tables just to be lost in their own world of imaginative play. And they concluded that kids do thrive in a simple environment. And the same goes for our home. So just because you have the stuff there doesn't mean that it's helping your child. And less really is better for kids. It's interesting though to look at the stats. Like the United States, we have 40% of the world's toys, but only 3% of the world's kids. So we have almost half of the toys in the world and a fraction of the kids. The average American kid gets 70 toys a year. I mean, there's 52 weeks in a year, 70 toys a year. And I was totally on pace with that with our first daughter before I got into minimalism. I bought her things weekly. We would go to Walmart. That's kind of our happy place. We were bored. Okay, let's go buy something. And so I think our culture does also feed us this message as parents that we can buy our kids a good childhood. And it's not true. They don't need more stuff. They need us. They need us more present and a simplified environment at home.
It's so funny how different kinds of foods can create an experience that's almost like unmatchable in like a real food world, right? Same way as a lot of toys and stimulating objects and things that kids play with become like it eliminates their ability to think for themselves. And an example of that would be like, young kids on very time wasting video games and or watching shows or mind numbing like uses of their day, right? Like where they're not being creative and they're just experiencing creativity that's just being doctored up for them. And I know so many parents out there are probably thinking like, man, how many times am I telling my kids like, go find something to do, right? And they've got like thousands of toys in the house and they're like, I'm bored. I can't find anything to do. And it's so common for that to happen. And it's almost like there needs to be you have to go through that season of purging and get rid of all that stuff. And then there's like a learning curve there. Did you experience that with your kids? Like as you were starting to like offload stuff, was there an adaptation period or was it like right away they were finding things to do?
Let's see, to be honest, there wasn't much of an adaptation period. I remember the first time that we decluttered our daughter's bedroom and she had a ton of toys in there. The environment was radically changed. I had left like maybe 10 toys in her room. And I remember holding my breath as she came into her room for the first time to see it. And I was kind of standing at the doorway, just watching her, unsure of how she would respond. And she walked into her room and she just kind of started like twirling. And she looked back at me and she's like, Mom, thank you. She loved the new space. She loved how she felt in her room. And I loved how the room felt too. I could go in for the first time and sit on the floor with her and not be distracted by seeing all the things that I felt like I needed to do or to tidy or to pick up. I could just be there and be with her. And so she loved it right away. I didn't get rid of all the stuff that I had removed from the room right away. I put it in storage for 3 months. She could ask for anything back that she wanted. She really maybe asked for one or two things. So no, I mean, she started playing more deeply, more independently. And, she still would say she was bored. I think any kid, does that and needs a little bit of redirection at some time. But no, there really wasn't much of an adjustment. And I think it's so important too, though, that we do give our kids this opportunity to have boredom. I mean, boredom isn't a bad thing. I think it's only been in our English, language for maybe 100 years or so. It hasn't been around that long, right? Like we used to always have things we were doing, and now like boredom isn't bad. And even like thinking about I'm just thinking, out loud here, even thinking about like our prayer life, like we need to learn how to have time that is just almost, quiet, to be bored, to be able to sit in silence and to be okay with that, to not have to be entertained all the time. I think that our brains are actually changing, for the worse when we are constantly distracted, constantly entertained and expecting that. We're not going to be able to sit and just to be present to the moment where God wants to meet us. And so I think that this goes deeper than just like, oh, my kid isn't going outside to play because, they're bored or they have too much stuff. But I think it goes deeper. There's like a spiritual piece to it too. And that can start with our kids, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I remember a couple weeks ago, I went in with like a couple trash bags and I just decluttered. I threw away a lot of garbage because kids actually accumulate a lot of garbage, like papers and stuff that they're drawing on. And I got rid of a bunch of stuff, tons of toys. I threw it in a big thing to donate. Didn't even tell my daughter. Two of my kids share a room. And so she walked in the room. She's like, oh, thank you for cleaning my room, Mom. That's amazing. Didn't even notice the huge amount of things that I got rid of.
I believe it.
And like there were those big squishmallows, like whoever created those, man, I have a word to say with them. But like I got rid of some big ticket items and she hasn't said a word since. It's been sitting in my garage. I haven't donated it yet, but like she hasn't missed it for one day. And her first response was the same as yours of like, thank you.
Wow.
My room feels so much better and lighter.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem I'm running into is like I keep having to do that. So I want to go over like what are some strategic ways we can almost like catch clutter before it even enters our door. Do you know what I mean? Like how can we set up habits where we're not constantly having to go every 3 months and be like, oh, it looks I feel like I'm commenting on my kids' space more than I'm telling them how beautiful of kids they are. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's becoming the focal point of my attention with them. And I don't like having to be like, hey, go clean up your mess.
Right.
So how can we stop it on the front end?
Yeah, we don't want to be nagging them like that. It doesn't feel good as a parent, but at the same time, we want their room to be, halfway decent. So I get that. I think there's a couple ways. I think first we have to look at, as parents, our buying habits. A lot of times, I mean, we have agency over this as parents. A lot of times we are the ones who are buying things for our kids, bringing things into our home. Not always, but sometimes we are. So I think that's the first place we would look. Like, am I actually buying them quite a bit of stuff? Oh, maybe I need to buy a little bit less. But then also gift giving is a real thing. People, we have birthdays, we have grandparents who mean well, and they want to just shower our kids with stuff. And that's real. So I think if gift giving is something that is filling your home up with stuff, that's something you really need to kind of rein in, have some tools to talk to people who are giving your kids things, saying, hey, it's great, you can give our kids things, but don't make it stuff, make it experiences, make it consumables. Bath bombs are a big hit at our house. I give lots of bath bombs, chocolates, stuff that you can use up and then it's gone. So it's not going to clutter up your space. And yeah, just don't be afraid to, if someone gives you something, to know that the purpose of a gift is to show love. And once that love has been shown, you can really do what you want with it. There's no obligation to keep it.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving on from the kid conversation, what about your kitchen? Because I imagine a lot of people, especially in our audience, are spending like a decent amount of time in their kitchens every day. We're big advocates of like cooking from scratch. So I get it. I love my kitchen and want it to be a workspace and also sanctuary. And those are hard to be at the same time.
Yeah.
So what did you find was helpful when you were decluttering your kitchen area?
For me, for decluttering the kitchen, I used a tool called the power of half. This is what I called it and what I talk about in the book, where I just went into every different area of the kitchen and experimented with having half of the amount of stuff there. So if it was coffee mugs and I had 14, now I had 7. And I would just box those things up and put them in the basement for a while. There's so many duplicates in a kitchen. Sometimes we use them, but a lot of times we don't. I mean, you can have one spatula. I've had one spatula for years and it's been fine. And so I think just this idea of, can I get rid of half of these things? And how does my kitchen feel when I do? I love thinking of it as an experiment because you can always add stuff back in if you need to. I had to add back in more spoons. It's just, everybody's different. People use their kitchen in different ways. But I just think that we can really have less than we think we need there. Gadgets, for example, a lot of like your avocado slicer, your strawberry huller, you can use a knife for those things. You don't need all those gadgets really. So yeah, it's just a reframe of like, how can I have less in my kitchen? Are these duplicates? And then what I found is when you do declutter your kitchen, your systems work a lot better. So I never had a clean sink until I had less stuff in my kitchen. And now I do. But if I had a whole nother set of plates and glasses, you're going to use those. You just pull those out and you use them because they're there. We're going to take that path of least resistance and pull out a clean plate instead of hand washing one to keep the clutter down. So when you have less stuff, your system is going to work really well too in your kitchen, which I love.
How does this work when you're entertaining? Do you ever feel like you have a mismatch of things, or can you just use paper plates? I'm sure there's a better answer, but how do you manage it?
Yeah, I don't really love paper plates. Usually I've got enough stuff that if I have it all clean, it's great for hosting. So I just have to be on top of the game to have washed the dishes and have them put away. And then I've got enough for hosting and that's fine. Some people I know will buy an extra set, maybe at the thrift store, an extra set of plates and glasses, and keep them up high on your kitchen shelf so that they're not in your daily use. It's not something you're going to pull down every day. You just bring it down for those occasions when you do host. Because again, if you get too much in the mix, your system isn't going to flow on the daily.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm thinking like we have like 2 sets of dishes. We should just start using only one and leave the other set for hosting, because we do host a lot. So I'm like, we do need a lot of plates and bowls. That's really good. I love your principle of half. That freaks me out a little bit, but I love it because I think it's just such an easy way to open up a drawer and be like, okay, half of this needs to go. And then how much more peace will you feel? I know it's overstimulating to my eyes and my brain every time I open a new drawer, and it's just like clutter, 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 clutter. And then it's even hard to keep the drawers clean. You're so right. Your sink will never be clean if you just keep reaching for the new plate. That's such a good piece of advice. And so simple.
Yeah, I know half sounds kind of scary, but I think that part of the way that we learn how to have enough is by experimenting on the side of too little also. Like most of us know what too much feels like, but we don't know what too little feels like. And so we can get to that point of just ruthlessly decluttering, get to the point of almost too little, and then add stuff back in. And that's when you find how much is enough, especially in the kitchen.
Now, do you have this same approach with like stocking your pantry and keeping excess food and spices on hand? Like, how do you do that part?
I just buy stuff for the week. I don't stock up very much. I've got a few extra cans, maybe beans if I want to make chili last minute or something. But no, I don't stock up.
And that you feel like is helpful just in keeping everything organized?
Yeah, and I've found I've always had what I needed. It takes a little planning. You got to know what you're going to buy and what you're going to make. But yeah, I just like it simpler. I'm not going to have all these options. Oh, I could make this or this or this. No, I know I'm going to make this, and this is what I'm going to make, and this is what I have. And so it just helps me simplify things.
No, that's great, because I wanted you to say that, because again, the house I grew up in, we had like 4 different pantries. Like we had pantry in the laundry room, and then we had like this big elaborate pull-out thing in the kitchen, and then we had this bread drawer, and we had all of these spaces where we could hypothetically have food. And I feel like I never knew what to eat. I was like, what are we eating? You know, it was like, oh, go back and get a can of whatever. And then to manage that system and make sure nothing's expired or you have the right ingredients or shop your own pantry, it was just not a strength of my mother's. And so it ended up just being a place to hold more things. And then I go back and forth because there's been times where we have had like no stock. Remember this in 2020? And we were like, oh, we actually do need potatoes. What's happening? And then there's times where we obviously overstock. And so finding that balance. So for you, a weekly rhythm is helpful. Maybe a bi-weekly or a monthly rhythm is helpful for someone else. But this idea that we have to have 6 of everything on hand all the time, especially when we live 2 seconds from a grocery store, perhaps, we can challenge that. And I never hear people say that part. I hear them say, you need to have a prepped pantry in your basement and you need to have all these extra things. And so your perspective is new to me, and I actually appreciate that a lot in terms of clutter and clarity. Living spaces. This is a big piece of it too. Walk me through any sort of tactical approach you have to the living area, especially as a large family like yours.
So how did I declutter the living area?
Yeah.
I have a chapter in the book that's called Decluttering Spaces of Rest. It's the living area and the bedroom. So we go into this. I would start with setting the intention for the space. What is the purpose of your living room? For me, I found it was rest and connection. And if it was filled with clutter, it really wasn't serving that purpose. And so that was the first thing. Really get clear on what the point of the room is. Then go through and just pick up the trash. You'd be amazed at how much trash you can collect in bedrooms, especially, or in living rooms. So just go through, pick up the trash, and then look at the stuff in the room. Does it belong in the room? Does it need to go back to its home? You know, like the little Monopoly dogs still in the living room, put it back in the box, that type of stuff. Get the stuff back to its home, rehome things. Then you can start decluttering, go through and just hold the items. And if it's something that you want to keep, you know, if you love it. I like using this tool called the spontaneous combustion question, and it's from the minimalists. And it says, you hold the item in your hand and you ask yourself, how would I feel if this item spontaneously combusted? Would I feel good? Well, then you want to let that item go. Would you feel devastated? No, then you want to keep that. If you're kind of in the middle, you could take a picture of the item and then let it go. But that's helped me, you know, work through how do I really feel about this thing? And so once you've decluttered things, then you can just see how your space is feeling. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to feel a lot better, more peaceful, more connected in a decluttered space.
Did you find in your journey that you had to purchase anything new in order to make your space functional? For example, there's a lot of people who are like very pro organizational bins and things for your drawers and things like that. Was any of that helpful in your journey?
A little bit, but you got to keep in mind that the organizational industry is like a $12 billion industry. So they want you to buy stuff to hold your stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not what I would recommend. You want to declutter first, like ruthlessly declutter first. And then like for us, we have maybe about 10 kids books that I put at the side of the couch. And I did go to the thrift store and get a little basket to put those books in. And so I did buy some baskets like that afterwards, but not until I knew exactly what I wanted to keep. The idea isn't to like go buy organizational bins and then hide your stuff in it. You don't need more bins. You need less stuff.
It's fair. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask the question, because I've fallen under that for sure.
Yeah.
If I just had places to put all this stuff,
it's
then
it's not a clutter problem. It's a storage problem.
No.
And I think 9 times out of 10 is probably a clutter problem. And then if you still are having issues, then if you literally have no storage. I have a hard time believing though that like any house built in the United States doesn't have enough storage. Now people probably are going to be up in arms about that, but how do you suggest managing areas of hobby? So for us, we have a home gym. We also have some like outdoor gear, and it can tend to be cluttering for us in our spaces. Do you have a way to think about the items that you don't want to get rid of because they're a part of a like rich hobby of yours, but it also requires a lot of stuff? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think with hobbies, the first thing we want to ask ourselves is this something I'm actually doing regularly right now? A lot of times we'll buy things for our aspirational self, like that person that we hope we are or want to be or wish we were. Like we have several guitars in our home because apparently my husband is going to start playing the guitar one of these days. So I think first just get real with yourself. Are you using it? Are you going to use it? And if you are, I think then you can just get a storage space that can hold your stuff, and kind of either we keep our kids, for example, their sports equipment in a tub in the garage, and that's really easy to go get and bring to the backyard when they want to. So just figure out then a system that works for you, but be really real with yourself if you're actually using the stuff or not. Because if you're not, somebody else probably can.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I'm sure you're thinking about our bows and our archery gear and our arrows.
Yeah, we don't have a good spot for that. And then also me and the girls do a lot of working out in the family room. And so we do have dumbbells up there because we like to use the TV program. It's not an issue right now, but I could see that escalating into, now there's bands and now there's a mat and all these things. So I think having a space in that regard is helpful.
Yeah.
In the book, you kind of talk about how the first floor of your home is your heart and the upstairs is your mind, right? How do we apply these decluttering principles in the physical space to our heart and our mind, and our spiritual journey?
Yeah. So the book, it's broken into 3 sections. And section 1 is laying the foundation and decluttering the soul. So there's always a inner piece and an outer piece to each section of the book. And so then you journey on up through the home to section 2, which is decluttering the main floor and the heart. And an example chapter here would be decluttering your wardrobe and letting go of comparison. Part 3, you journey up to decluttering the upstairs and the mind. And this would be like decluttering sentimental items and letting go of fear. So what I realized, and the reason I wrote the book this way, is that as I was letting go of my unneeded physical items, I was actually curating 2 homes, like an outer home and an inner home. And so the outer home housed my possessions, but the inner housed my soul. It housed God. And I hadn't really considered what the state of my inner home was before, in the sense of, was it cluttered? Like my outer world was cluttered. And I realized that it was the space that Paul says is supposed to be the temple of the Holy Spirit. It was filled with inner clutter. Like in the book, I talk about different types of clutter, like restlessness and hurry, distraction, and fear, reactivity. And these things I imagined in prayer as boxes in my inner home. And the Holy Spirit was in there, but he was kind of pushed in a corner. He couldn't move throughout my inner home because of all this stuff. And what happened was when I started uprooting the inner clutter too, was that I started to have these moments where I had just these overwhelming urges to do something. Like I was in the grocery store with my kids and had this just overwhelming urge to text a friend who I hadn't talked to in a couple months, but I knew she was going to have a baby sometime soon. And so I sent her this text, "Hey, I'm thinking of you, And she's like, "Hey, please pray. I'm headed to the hospital. I'm in labor." I was like, wow, okay. So I started to feel like these Holy Spirit promptings that I hadn't before when I had all this inner clutter. And so I do think that there can be a parallel between our outer and inner worlds. And we can look at this not in like a shoulding, judgmental way, but more just in like a curious, kind of observing way. Like, what is my home reflecting back to me? Is it chaos? Is it distraction? Is it peace? Is it calm? And then are those accurate descriptors of my inner home as well?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I'm hearing when you start creating space, it becomes a habit. You start to see it spark up in other places in your life, right? So if you're creating space in your home to be still and to not be constantly stimulated, right? And you're kind of allowing yourself to be bored, that word that's 100 years old. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
Then you're kind of in your quiet time, you're in your reflection time, and you're allowing yourself to be still. You're allowing yourself to receive rather than constantly trying to kind of intentionally activate. Like I'm going to read the plan. I'm going to say the prayer. I'm going to do the thing. and then I got to get into the car and I got to go to work. And then I got to have the meeting. I got to, be on the call, and then I'm going to come home, make the dinner, clean the house. It's like, it's constantly like a to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of opening up some of that time. I see this in so many areas in life, right? It's so easy to start small with like discipline, for instance, right? If you want to start being a more disciplined person, you can do small, easy things. And as you start to kind of accumulate those wins of being disciplined, you see them start to naturally occur in other areas of your life.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? I want to become more like, I want to be more like healthy and fit, and take on my nutrition and my eating habits, my shopping habits. And you start out with, you know what, I'm going to start working out twice a week. Maybe it's 3 times a week. And then you're like, you're rolling into that weekend and you're like, like, should I crack open that bag of chips? Like, is that part of this journey that I'm on? And it starts to kind of creep in. It's an avalanche of snowballs. And so I love it. I think exactly what you're saying is absolutely true. I think there absolutely are parallels to so many areas in our life where, I mean, the common kind of phrase is, show me where you spend your money, and I'll kind of show you where you spend your time. Right. And the reality is that that parallel right there could be very easily kind of transcribed into show me where like where you're spending all of your mental energy on your stuff, and I'll show you how you're spending your spiritual energy, right? Yeah. So no, I agree. I dig that.
Yeah, I want to talk about technology for a second, because this is something that it doesn't necessarily take up space, but you talk about how to handle that in almost like a less distraction way, decluttering your technology in terms of like our usage with it. So what was your journey through this aspect of the decluttering process?
So what I realized was, as I started blogging and growing an Instagram following, was that I was distracted by my phone. I was constantly wanting to see how many blog hits, how many, Instagram comments. And as I was decluttering my home, I realized that if I was still tethered to my phone in this way, I wasn't really free. I wasn't really feeling that freedom that having a decluttered space promised, because I was still filling that newfound time and space with scrolling or checking my phone constantly. And so I realized I needed to practice digital minimalism, which really set boundaries around my phone usage. And I started doing some things like put a rubber band around my phone. So when I started to scroll, I would have that tactile cue to stop. Or I put my phone on grayscale. There's a study that they did on college kids that showed that they spent 40 minutes less time a day on their phone if it was on grayscale. So I tried that, and it does help. I started just making myself less available. I realized I didn't have to be constantly on call. I kept my mornings quiet. So put my phone to bed in a different room, not within arm's reach at night, and then kept it in airplane mode until I was ready to engage with it in the morning, because I found that if I went to my phone first thing in the morning, I was focusing on what it said was important, not on what I thought was important. So in the book, I have a whole chapter on digital minimalism and talk more about that too. But I just think it's so important that if we are looking to live more intentionally, we can't overlook this digital piece. And even when I was getting into this journey, I went to talk to a mentor of mine, and he said, Julia, look at the back of your iPhone. What is the picture on it? And I had never heard this before. And it was an apple with a bite out of it. And so as a Christian, he's like, what better symbol for temptation could there be? I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have the upper hand over this phone, or I don't have the upper hand on my technology usage right now. It is kind of controlling me. And so that was really eye-opening for me. And also I've found that in times of like now when I'm wanting to scroll, like I'm, not perfect. This is still a journey I'm on. And so now when I'm tempted to scroll, connection is what helps me so much. Because a lot of times that's what I'm wanting anyway. But I think the antidote to distraction is connection. And so I can realize, hey, I'm tempted to scroll. I'm going to put my phone down. I'm going to go read a book with my kid instead. That's what I really needed anyway. And I feel so much better after that than I would have if I would have, scrolled Instagram for 5 minutes or something.
Yeah. I love how you say even responding to text messages, you almost like batch that. Like you're not always on call. And because we can just be distracted by the constant dings, right? Ding, 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 ding. And you always think, well, texting is very instant. Joey probably hates this because I already don't answer his phone calls and I won't answer his texts. But I think having a period of the day where your phone is at least set aside. You can check it maybe every hour if you want, but I don't think I need to constantly be picking it up, answering that text, putting it down, 3 minutes later, answering another message. And that's such a simple thing, but if you think about how much that jolts you from your regular rhythm, like if your house has a pulse, you're constantly like almost like stopping that pulse for a second to answer something outside of your home, especially if your kids are watching.
Yes.
And that's the piece that I am really trying to figure out and I want to lean into more. I have felt like, so we had a baby 4 months ago. I guess he's almost 5 months now, but this postpartum period has felt very chaotic and it has almost elevated the stress around our household clutter. Like I feel like Joey and I are constantly having conversations about like, how are there more dishes in the sink? Like how is our house not more easily maintained if we have all hands on deck? How do you find that you can activate your kids in this process and like bring your spouse on board and really work as a family so that you can have a more peaceful transition, especially in seasons of high stress, like having a baby or a job change or whatever that might be?
Yeah, that's a great question. Congrats, by the way, on your baby. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's so important to work as a team in your home. I don't think that it's fair for one person who lives in the home to be in charge of the whole home. And I was kind of raised in a household where that's kind of what I saw. My mom, she stayed at home and that was her job. And I think that once you set that expectation in the home that, hey, we're a team, and you kind of say that often, we're a team. If you live in the home, you take care of it. If you own your stuff, you take care of it. And then they just, get used to that. Like that is the way we operate in this home. This is our family's culture. And it works. I mean, I do have to, keep that message on my, I have to say that message constantly just so that they know that. And my husband, he will do laundry, and that's great. So we kind of divide the tasks. He does laundry, I'll do the dishes. And I kind of let people choose what they like to do. Like, I don't mind hand washing dishes if I need to. He hates to. He loves to fold laundry. Okay, like that works out well. So kind of find what people like. So there's not as much resistance either to it. But and then set up rhythms in your home, like Saturday mornings, or when we do more of a deep clean. Like if toilets are going to get cleaned, it's going to be Saturday morning. And I mean, my kids all know how to clean a toilet. They can do that if that's what they want to do that morning, but they know that we're going to clean for that power hour in the morning, and then they can really choose how they want to help out in that way. I also like to teach them to be noticers. I say, hey, let's just kind of look around and notice what needs done. So that gives them a lot of freedom, a lot of ownership. I'm not like telling them, hey, go pick up this and this and this. It's more like, hey, let's look around. I noticed there's some things that need to be done. What can we do? And they respond well to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the phrases my kids hate, they always say, Mom, don't tell me what I need to do. I already know, because I'm trying to like give them directives.
Right.
And there's this great book called Hunt, Gather, Parent. And it wasn't written from a Christian perspective, but she basically goes around and she observes other cultures. And she has this thing she observed in the Mayan culture that she studied, which I think she calls a comedito. It's basically the anti-chore chart, right? We're not going to tell our kids exactly what their responsibilities are in the home. We want them to, exactly like you said, notice or observe what the need is, because in adulthood you can't just fly by like, oh, got my checklist done, now I'm good. Like in adulthood you are expected to also notice the needs of others and yourself, and really training that in your kids is hard, and I'm working hard on that. But I think your point of like having them notice things, hey, what do you mean I need to pick up? Well, notice the dining room table, what could we clear from that? How do you manage the tension between fun, creative expression in the home, aka like crafting time, and this idea that our spaces, when they are cluttered and disorganized, they stress us out? So how do you still do crafts in your home? I'm just going to ask you very practically. How do you manage that? What does that look like? Is there cleanup time? What do you do?
Yeah. Our kids love art, love art. I've been pretty, though, minimal with it. Like they have markers, they have coloring books, and they have white paper. And that seems to give them enough creative tools to really create. Like my son, who's 4, he loves to draw, and he will for an hour. Sometimes we'll just sit there and draw with markers and a white piece of paper, a white paper pad. And so we don't bring in a ton of stuff. Like I do have some scissors and all that, but I don't have Play-Doh in our house. I don't, have paints, but we do have the craft stuff that they love. So I think you can focus on just what they really love and what they will really use a lot. What do they use the most? And then I have just a old tablecloth that I put in the center of the floor of the home, and that is the art space. And they know that, and they're not going to take the art around to the tables or to the couch or anywhere else. They're going to do art, and they're going to do it in that one space, and they'll sit there and they'll do it for a long time. And it's great. It's not messy. It's not hard to clean up. They can help me clean up. I have a little basket that their markers go into, and they can put their coloring books into too.
So you do it on the floor. You take an old placemat, you put on the floor, which, by the way, kids coloring on the floor, they think it's like the funnest thing ever. They're like, what? I get to color laying down? And then that's brilliant, because you're not cluttering the space that you're also intending to dine around and have a family meal. Okay, that is such a easy, tangible tool I'm taking with me today. I love that. Setting aside a temporary space. That's what I also love too, because I think the tension can be like, oh, we'll set up an art station. We've fallen into that trap too. Like set up a space designed for that. And it's like, but if that's not a constant need in your family, that's also kind of a waste of space.
It's cute for a day, and then your kids obliterate it.
It's
and then
Instagram
they don't like it either. And then it's messy, it's dirty. Then they're grabbing stuff from the station and bringing it to the dining room table, because they know that the mom and dad will inevitably clean that table.
That is so true. I love that. Okay,
there's something about the novelty too. I think there's something about that novelty of bringing it out of like from under a kitchen cabinet and bringing it back out into the space. Like, oh, there's art stuff again. Let's use it, instead of always seeing it. And then they just kind of, don't become as interested in it.
Yes. And then it's like, this is the thing we're doing. Like for this afternoon, we're doing art. You can go read a book if you want, but like, don't come tell me you're bored while the art stuff is out. And then it sort of takes it out of sight, out of mind. Oh my gosh, you're so brilliant. I love that a lot. What other, because I'm probably more attuned to this being in the home all day, but like, what are the sources of clutter?
I was thinking like adult clothes, right? Because like kids' clothes is like, I roll in there. It's like, yeah, you're not wearing this, or it doesn't even fit you. I'm taking it. It's gone, right?
Yeah.
There's shoes that get, lost, right? That I'll take, and they're most of the shoes our kids are done with. By the way, it ain't being donated.
Yeah,
Those things are toast. But adult clothes, as you've been talking, I've already been like thinking through our closet, and it's so funny because most of the things that I keep in my closet, I don't even wear. And it's like I have a dresser, and it's like, that's where my clothes are. And I have a whole closet full of clothing that I'm like, I should probably get rid of like 90% of the stuff that's in there. And I can almost guarantee it, and she's cringing as I'm saying this, that Elizabeth probably, who dominates 75% of said closet, probably has a significant portion of stuff in there that could just go away.
Yeah, it's true.
What do we do? How do we solve this?
Well, I think awareness is the first piece, like you guys are talking about.
Okay,
I think
great.
that, we wear 20% of the clothes that we own. 80% we don't wear, like across the board. I think most people would agree with what you're saying. So 80% of our closet we don't wear. So I would say just keep the 20% that you do wear. Just keep your favorites. And this can be beneficial in a lot of ways. We don't realize sometimes that the clothes that we have hanging in our closets can trigger feelings. It can trigger sadness. It can trigger guilt. You see maybe a hand-me-down or of a loved one who's passed away, or maybe a dress you wore to your grandma's funeral. Like, you see that, and that triggers sadness. Maybe you have a pair of jeans that you wish you fit into and you don't, and that triggers guilt or frustration. So we can like feel bad in the morning getting dressed, and we don't even know why. And a lot of times it can be just the clothes that we have even hanging in our closet that we don't wear. And so when I realized this, I was like, oh, I'm only keeping what I love because I want to feel good in the morning. I don't want to have to make as many decisions either. Like, am I going to wear this or this or this? Like, reduce those decisions, reduce your decision fatigue, and save your problem solving and decision making for bigger things later in the day. So yeah, just keep the 20% that you wear, and it's really life changing. It's great.
What has your husband's response been to this journey?
So he was skeptical at first because I love to buy things, and he's like, "You're gonna do what?" But what he saw was that it changed me. And as he saw it was changing me, and I was becoming more peaceful, I was becoming more present. Like, I would ask him how his day was, but I wouldn't really listen because I was too distracted. I was overwhelmed. I'm like, I don't know what you just said, but great. So I started listening to his responses. I even kind of started taking notes on my phone about things he had said, and then I could ask him specifically the next day, how did that meeting go with so and so? And he realized that I was becoming really more intentional in our relationship, and just in the way my presence, I was more fun to be around. And so I think once he noticed those changes, he was 100% on board. And yeah, he's great about donating things now too.
Yeah, I love that. Several years we have like gotten a dumpster because we realized we just had not garbage. I guess it was bad.
It was a dumpster. So we have this saying that it's really easy to, a dumpster's like $500. Okay. And like you can, it is, when that dumpster comes into your driveway, all of a sudden it becomes a major trigger in your brain of nothing is safe. Right. You start walking around your house. You're like, I have an opportunity that anything I want in my house can go away forever. Now, again, I'm not like pro, like wasteful or like, we had, the reason we did this, to clarify so people don't think that we're just like filling dumpsters with toys, because that's not the reality. When we first got married, all of our furniture, all of our things, we did everything hand-me-down, everything. And we lived a hand-me-down life for probably 6-7 years of our marriage, which it doesn't sound, oh, boo-hoo, but it's like for 6 or 7 years of married life, everything, every piece of furniture you sit on, every TV you turn on, every pot and pan that you use, everything. I'd say most everything we had was a hand-me-down. And so what we were encountering is most hand-me-down things, as you alluded to earlier, they're not great. And so like we had tables that were melted and like glitterified, and someone gave us this table. My parents gave us this table because they'd put a hot pan on it, which melted a big old like ring into the top of it. Or it was like a piece of furniture that was once a cabinet, but we used it as a changing table early on, but it was actually just like an old cabinet that's kind of low key garbage. And then we had,
people are going to think we're hillbillies.
We are low key. I mean, kind of. And so we had all of our couches and all of our ottomans, all of our everything was a hand-me-down. And it just hit us one day when we were kind of like walking around our house. It was like, oh my gosh,
It was too much.
And because we were always we weren't shopping, right? We weren't paying for any of this stuff, but I would get messages from people that says, "Hey, I got a new bookshelf." And I'm thinking like, it'd be nice to have a place to put the books. It's free. I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, we looked around and we were like, we have so much stuff from people that were decluttering, and we were just the Goodwill.
We were secondhand clutterers. I mean, that's something I wanted to say in the show is like for people who
we're upcycling, but we had a problem.
We did. I think we changed about 3 years ago, where we stopped accepting free things from people because we just were like, even this table that the podcast stuff is sitting on is donated from your aunt.
We still have free stuff.
Everything I'm looking at around this room, besides these mics, obviously. But like if you fall in a trap where like you're a young married couple and you're not in a shopping habit, so maybe you're not going to the store all the time, but everyone is like, hey, I got an extra couch.
Exactly.
Do you want it? It actually, you end up paying for that in the long run because you have to pay for someone to haul that away. So there are great places that can haul away old furniture and donate it. And we did do that for the stuff that was salvageable. But we got into this rhythm where we were just taking on so much stuff, even though it was used and we weren't paying for it. It was almost like the opposite of like, well, I didn't pay for that. So like, it's not hurting us. No, it's hurting you. Stop taking the things you don't need in your home. Mm-hmm. Everything from this gigantic stuffed teddy bear that I thought was going to be like so funny for the girls to have. And then it became the bane of my existence.
It was 10 feet tall.
10 feet tall. I have a picture of it. Maybe I'll share.
It was a massive teddy bear. We had like car top carriers, like shells that was broken.
We didn't even have a van.
It was like, hey, if you ever, have a van someday and you want to use this thing, I'm thinking like that would be convenient for us traveling in the future, but I'd have to just fix it. It was like, we had so much junk. So anyways, we bought the dumpster. It's like $500. And yeah, nothing was safe. And it was so freeing. It was beautiful. It was so much stuff went to the dumpster.
Yeah, it's a liberating thing. And Julia, that's why I want you to kind of share, because you talk about this idea of like going through the hypothetical scenario in your brain, and that can cause you to hold on to a lot of things like, oh, but what if I need this someday? Or what if I, like us, oh, well, if we do get a van someday, it would be nice to have a shell top carrier because when we travel, we obviously need to overpack. It's like, no, you don't. How do you address the fears that people have if they pare down their personal belongings, that they might need stuff in the future? They won't be accommodating or they won't be cared for in the future if they get rid of some of these items in their home.
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I think it's important to realize that the stuff we bring into our home has more of a cost than just what we pay for it. So, or even if you're getting it, as a hand-me-down, there's a cost to that item. Anything we bring into our home requires some of our time, our attention, our energy, and we have to realize that. Also, I think for women, it's important to know that our stress levels can be higher. There's studies that show this, that when we are surrounded by a lot of stuff, our stress levels can be higher. There's a study out of UCLA that showed that, women's stress levels in the home were tied to the amount of belongings they and their families had collected. They had higher cortisol levels if they had more stuff in their home, the moms did. And so the cortisol was supposed to stay high in the morning, taper off at night, but it stayed high all day, which led to stress, anxiety, sleeping problems. So realize what your stuff can do to you if you have too much of it. I think that's the first piece to overcoming this fear. But then, like, if you're afraid to let something go, I think we need to, first of all, tap into trust, kind of look at our history. Have we always had what we needed when we needed it? Most of us have. And so we can trust that in the future, if we do have that van and we do need those, different pieces for it, that we'll have that. We'll have what we need in the future. We don't need it right now. We can live for the present moment, live for who we are right now. And that helps us show up more fully in the moment as who we are and live more deeply in the life we are living. And I think then too, when we hold on to things just in case, that's again an emotional response. We're not putting much reason behind that. Sometimes we can finish the sentence. This is a tool. Finish the sentence. If you are saying, I'm going to keep this just in case what? Say it out loud. Say it to a friend. Maybe you have 8 vases in your kitchen and you're keeping them all. Like, I'm going to keep all these vases just in case one of them breaks. Have I ever broken a vase before? No. Okay, 2 will do. So we apply some logic, some reasoning to this emotional attachment, and that can help us let go.
I have a really, so I'm gonna ask this question in a very strange way, just because I'm having a hard time formulating it in my brain. So forgive me, both of you.
Okay.
Go
Elizabeth
for it.
loves this.
No, go for it.
So, our generation, at least for Elizabeth and I, we are like in the gap, right? So I've got parents that have, like most of their parents' belongings have now become theirs. If you're tracking with me, one way or another, either they've passed away, or they've downsized into a retirement facility, etc. And the same goes for Elizabeth's parents. Now, and then we've got kids, and so we have not taken on any of our parents' stuff, right? There may be people listening to this. I would guarantee there are some that they are in that. They're not in our stage, right? They're in the upper stage where they have accumulated their parents' stuff. And so I wanted to formulate a quick example of one way that, okay, so my dad is actually kind of bad at this. And if you hear this, Dad, I'm sorry, you kind of stink at holding on to things. But he did do one thing really well. And I want to bring that up. Whenever he has something, whether it be, so we have a big hunting kind of family legacy. So there's been a lot of firearms for hunting that have been passed down for generations, right? Hunting knives, this sort of thing. Whenever my dad had something passed down to him from his dad or his grandfather that he wanted to come to us, if he's not actively using it, he gives it to us immediately. There is no, he holds on to it. And he says, if you want it, I want you to have it. There is no, he's like, it's been in the family for years. This is what it's used for. If you will use it, I want you to have it. And Elizabeth can attest to this. It happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We have my grandfather's stainless steel pans, and we use them every single day. And that's how we got them. It would be very easy for my dad to hold those because it was his, as a kid, he used those pans, right? But he didn't. He had pans. He thought, I'm going to give these to my kids. And he gave them to us. And we use them every day.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we're over here just taking donated stuff all day long.
Julie's like, you guys gotta stop.
No, but I mean, like, that would be an example. Our kitchen is decent. I would say it's one of the areas we do well, but not perfect. There are definitely other things though, and I'm thinking about, and again, all love to Carol and your mom. There's so many people out there that are holding that stuff for their kids.
Yeah, what do they do?
Or they've got the China set, or they've got and this is I guess the question I'm asking you, Julia, is how would you speak to somebody that almost feels like they're carrying the burden of their parents' legacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, aside from the tactic of my dad of like, just give it away now, which I think could be a potential solution, have you encountered a way to communicate with these people or talk to them? What do you think is really going on there? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's real, because a lot of those items are what we call sentimental items, where we think that the memory of the person is found within the stuff.
Mm.
It's not. It's found within us.
Mm.
Our memories are held within us, not within our stuff. So I think that's the first important thing to know, that you can let go of things without losing your memories of the people who they remind you of. So I like recommending just keeping your favorite sentimental things. Like, you can still have those great memories with one or two pieces of china instead of the whole set. Like, I, for example, kept 4 of my grandmother's china cups and saucers, and we use them often, my girls and I, for tea parties now. And then I can remember her when we use them. So sometimes less is even better, because you actually use the stuff.
Yeah.
When you have so much of it, a lot of times it's stored away. A lot of us have boxes of stuff in our basement or in our closets, and we don't get any emotional value out of those things because they are boxed away.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sentimental items basket in my closet, and I can pull it down and show my kids my grandmother's slanted handwriting on notes that she wrote me, or like a little wooden camel that I got when I was in Egypt traveling. And I can tell those stories, and the stories of my life come alive. And I think that's the same for other generations too, when we have fewer things that we can actually engage with and make those stories come to life through those things. Then they're serving the value that our loved one wanted them to. If they're boxed away, they're not. So keep your favorites. Definitely keep some. Some of that stuff's important, but just your favorites. Don't keep it all.
I love how you said that too, right? Because there's an honoring of a legacy when you can bring some form of stimulus into a story, and it's something that you're using on a regular basis. If I look at, I'm trying to think if I have anything that I'm holding on to. I don't have a ton. I'm sure I do though. But if I look at things that maybe I'm almost like forgetting about, but if you ask me, I could go into it and say, well, this was so-and-so's, it belonged to them, and I keep it in this cabinet, in this drawer. And it's like, well, should we use that? And I have these glasses that are important to me that
Like drinking glasses.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
my great grandfather started a bar and grill, and they're two of the glasses that would have been just in regular circulation of this bar and grill. Now, I don't let my kids use them, okay, because I only have two of them. I could never get another one, right? But whenever Elizabeth and I are celebrating something, or whenever we are having a date that we haven't had in a while, or just, like, it's just, we'll bust those out. There's only two of them, so it's one for me and one for her. And I like those, and I think that's an example of, they're in my cabinets. I see them every day, but they're not. Everyone out there is hearing me right now. You might have those glasses, right, and they've been sitting and they're just full of dust. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Yep.
the second that those glasses become full of dust, I don't know that I want them anymore.
Right.
Right. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, is that having something that, now again, I'm taking a risk, right? The risk is I could drop it, like I could break it, and I would not be happy if I broke one of those, right? But that's kind of the purpose of them, is to be used.
I think all in all, the reason why I love your book is because you really paint minimalism as almost this like spiritual discipline. It's like, it's always reminding what's most important in your heart and in your mind. It is a spiritual discipline to not rely on our own stockpiling. It is a spiritual discipline to not find all of our joy and contentment and happy feelings in our physical things, right? Like, we need to separate out where our true source of life is, where our true source of safety is, where our true source of provision is. And that's the piece where you've done such a great job of being really practical with people. Hey, this is how you get rid of the junk in your house, because it's affecting you every day. And also, this is how you reshape your mind and your heart so that you leave space for the Lord, so that you can hear his prompting, so that you can connect deeper with your kids. Even your subtle example of like, I want to scroll for 5 minutes, I'm needing connection, let me go read a book, is so powerful. And all these little things can seem so tiny, but when you add them up, those are days of impact. That's the difference between creating daily impact and just living your life stressed out with stuff. So, Julia, thank you for writing this book. I think everything you've shared today has been so brilliant and truthfully life-changing. You've heard me and Joey's struggles with struggle, and you would never know. I feel like if you walk into our house, we look minimalist because we have a huge open concept. We don't have a lot of stuff everywhere, but there's still room to grow. And I think the heart and the mind work too is also really important. So, Julia, tell people where they can find you, connect with you, grab your book, learn more from you.
Yeah, you can find the book anywhere books are sold. And you can find me at richandwhatmatters.com. That's my blog. And then I'm on Instagram at richandwhatmatters.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a great conversation.
Definitely about to go raid my closet. So
I know. There's so much decluttering.
Thank you for the spring cleaning, marching orders.
Love it.
Till next time.
Thank you again to today's podcast sponsors, both Ancestral Supplements. Go over to ancestralsupplements.com/homegrown and go check them out. If you're not on the beef liver and the fallopian tube uterus, the fem enhancement product I talked about earlier, and you are in your childbearing years or even after, they designed that specifically for women to be the most potent pill possible. I think over 42,000 women have taken it, and based on their records. It's amazing, guys. Go over there. They also have a bunch of other stuff you want to check out. If you're looking for a mineral supplement or a digestive enzyme or a good source collagen or colostrum, go check it out at Ancestral Supplement /homegrown. ancestralsupplements.com/homegrown. And then Haselmayer Goods, you guys know we launched that matcha, but we also have so much other stuff. We've got coffee, we have home goods, we have our lard dish soap, we have our horsehair dish brushes. There's a lot going on over there. Again, stuff we use in our home every day. Go check it out, shoptheh.com, use code homegrown at checkout for 10% off.